All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Let me just get our presentators up. Bear with me a moment. Okay. There's Patrick. Bennett should be coming. There we go. Perfect. All smooth. All right. So welcome to Filmocracy Fest and to our Q&A session with Cured. We're happy to have Patrick, Sam, and Bennett Singer join us today to share some of their insights on making the film. Thank you guys both for the opportunity to present your amazing film and with our audience and joining us today. So let's jump right in. Cured was produced and directed by Patrick Salmon and Bennett Singer. Patrick Salmon, a Washington, D.C.-based filmmaker, is the creator and executive producer of Codebreaker, an award-winning drama documentary about the British codebreaker Alan Turing that reached more than 3 million viewers worldwide. Bennett Singer, a Los Angeles-based filmmaker, has been making social issue documentaries for more than 20 years. He co-directed Brother Outsider, a portrait of gay civil rights activist Bayard Rustin that premiered at Sundance and won more than 20 prizes, including 8 Best Documentary Awards. So, first of all, welcome again. And to start us off, can you guys tell us how you both met and why you want to tell the story?
Yeah, it's Ben and I met, I guess, when I was making Codebreaker. A mutual friend connected us, and we were sort of trading war stories as we were both trying to get our films distributed. And Bennett actually joined Codebreaker as a consulting producer, and so we became friends through that process. And then a friend of mine put this story idea on my radar, and I had been familiar with it, but he presented it in a new light, and I was looking for a new film idea, and I realized that this would be a very compelling story. And so I recruited Bennett to join the effort, and we got started in the spring of 2015. And initially we realized we had to be focused on trying to interview as many people as possible who participated in this, because as you see from the film, a lot of the people are at a very advanced age. And so we wanted to capture as many voices as possible. And in fact, the first person we interviewed, Ronald Gold, he actually passed away about 6 months after we talked to him. So we're just so grateful that we have his recollections as well as all the other people in the film, because it's such a critical story to tell. It's an important story to tell. And the lessons from it are very much relevant to the present.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bennett, do you have kind of anything to add to that?
Sure. Well, I agree with all that. And but I also, I'm thinking about my own connection to the film when I first heard about the story. And I felt like I knew a fair amount about LGBT history, and obviously Stonewall gets a lot of attention, as it deserves to. But it really struck me that this piece of the story, or of the movement, was so pivotal and so central to everything that followed, and yet really so unknown. The idea that until 1973, every single gay person and lesbian person was automatically classified as being diseased and mentally ill, and then the idea that this kind of tiny and really ragtag band of activists, managed not only to challenge the institutional authority of the psychiatric establishment, these experts, but actually won. It was like such a amazing story to try to tell. And so I was very happy to partner with Patrick and actually to get the darn thing done 5 years after we started. It's been an odyssey, but we're thrilled to be here and to be sharing the story with folks around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely sounds like quite the journey indeed. Switching gears kind of to the actual production, can you tell us like the production process in terms of searching for these storytellers and archival materials, maybe how long it took to kind of make the film, and maybe any other surprises or notable discoveries you made along the way?
Yeah, well, one of the things we've tried to do with the film is find archival material of our main storytellers from that time period. And our archival research team, Murdu Chandra and Luann Jones, did a fantastic job helping guide that process and really finding some amazing footage. The 60 Minutes program with Charles Silverstein from 1973, which really brings to life the fight and demonstrates what kind of public attention this issue was getting in the summer and fall of 1973. And we, made archival visits, but we also were able to find people from the archival footage. Reverend Magora Kennedy, who's such an important voice in the film, we first identified her when we saw the David Susskind show from 1971, this historic television show where for the first time a group of out lesbians was on national television talking about their stories and who they were. And this mental illness question and debate was a big focus of the discussion. And David Susskind, in fact, was considered a progressive television host at the time. And you could hear from the clips that we showed in the film is he was sort of towing the company line, this sort of conventional wisdom. And that really demonstrates what the activists were up against. The vast majority of not only psychiatrists thought that gays and lesbians were mentally ill, but also, the overwhelming portion of the general public as well. So we think that the archival, where we see our main storytellers in action, really brings the film to life. And I guess I'll hand the baton to Bennett there to talk about some of the sort of in-person archival visits we did and some of the nuggets that process turned up.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. We had a road trip or a series of road trips going to various archives. And because, of course, even if they have online catalogs and databases, the reality is not everything is digitized. And even if stuff is digitized, not everything is accessible. Or, in our case, we were looking for, LGBT protests and interactions, a lot, that may or may not have been easy to find. So one of the main events in our research came when we were searching for material related to Dr. John Fryer, also known as Dr. Anonymous. He's the gay psychiatrist who gave that electrifying speech in 1972 at the APA convention, and wearing this mask and this, very dramatic tuxedo. And he died quite a while back, but his papers were given to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, and they are part of a big collection of like 217 boxes, to be exact. Wow. And with one of those boxes was miscellaneous audio. And of course, we dug out a tape recorder and managed to listen to all these cassettes. And in the process of doing that, we managed to find the actual audio of the speech he gave, this electrifying speech, that starts, "I am a psychiatrist, I am a homosexual." And it's really a passionate speech, but finding that audio and being able to include his voice delivering that speech from the actual day is really, I think, moving and takes the whole storytelling process to another level, instead of having an actor revoice it or just showing the text on the screen. So that was definitely a big moment of discovering a really central piece of the film. And similarly, I think the footage we found of the ZAP or the protest, also in LA, actually tying into the Filmocracy theme, but there was this really, I think, amazing protest where a group of LGBT activists confronted these mental health therapists, providers who were, talking about aversion therapy and the idea that, we want to help gay people by just, zap, another form of a zap, like a shock to people's, body parts. And so there's this actual, footage from that moment where not only do the protesters come in and really, express themselves in terms of, we've been listening to you and, we want to tell you that we are the experts on our lives. But the amazing thing there is that they didn't just invade and shout. They actually wanted to create a dialogue with the psychiatrists and psychologists. And that's what happened in that event. And there's footage of it, which is just so hugely beneficial to trying to tell that piece of the story. And then we did find the main organizer, who's also here in LA, and a really passionate activist named Don Kilhefner, who took us back to that moment and filled in some of his, memories, and including I think the terror of knowing that the SWAT team and the police were right outside, and, how was this all going to end up? So a lot of drama
Yeah.
along the way. And I do think, as Patrick said, being able to kind of juxtapose the present day interviewees with the footage from 50 years ago is kind of at the heart of the film and what we tried to do wherever we possibly could.
Yeah, and just kind of building on what you were saying before. So unlike many historical documentaries, we don't really have any voices of historians or experts or a narrator in the film. So yeah, can you tell us why you've left out the experts in this scenario?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a long creative process to reach that point, and I have to give credit to our amazing editor Steve Hefner, who was really pushing us in that direction. And we have a great board of advisors, amazing experts, psychiatrists, historians, various people who really provided valuable insights and expertise as we were developing and creating this film, producing it. So all along the way, expert voices were behind the production. And we actually interviewed a number of experts on camera. But you know how filmmaking works. You're in the edit suite and you're stitching the story together. And it just almost revealed itself with Steve's encouragement that we should let the storytellers guide people through this. And that was easier to do because a lot of we were able to include the psychiatrists who were part of this fight as well. And sort of they were the experts on that side of the story. And then you have the activists whose voices tell that piece of the story. And so it ended up being the firsthand participants were the experts, if you will, with the best authority to tell this story. And I think we're grateful with how that turned out, but also appreciate all the sort of expert advice we did get from our incredible board of advisors.
Yeah, it's definitely a good note. Yeah, Bennett, if you want to comment.
I was just, I think it being able to tell the story that way does give it more of a sense of immediacy and less of this sort of intermediate kind of sense of here are some experts to tell you what to think or why it matters. So I also, like, one of the taglines or slogans of the activists at the time was, "We are the experts on our lives." So like embodying that in the film seemed really like a good goal to try to achieve. Let's let the activists embody their own expertise. And so I feel that does end up working, and it just takes, I think, gives it another layer of texture and authenticity and immediacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that totally comes across, and definitely more personal story on such an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
So the film documents the arguments of Frank Kemeny made against what he called shabby, shoddy, sleazy pseudoscience that underpinned the mental illness classification for homosexuality. In your view, was the DSM fight about science or politics in this scenario, or both?
Bennett, you want to go first?
Sure. I guess I would say it was about both. At the core of their argument was that there was this diagnosis being used to classify gay people as mentally ill. And it was based, as Kemeny said in that quote you just shared with us, it was based on shoddy science. So there was a scientific argument, but to make that argument be heard and to actually convey that argument and persuade people, there were political tactics and activism, activist tactics and strategies involved too, such as these protests that we're talking about and the idea of creating a dialogue and, like, how do you persuade people who claim to be scientific that they weren't actually embodying positive principles of science? So it became this quest to make that point. And I think the activism and the protests and the invasions of these conferences, and then the dialogue and the conversations and becoming part of the conversation, were all political tactics that sent a message that was ultimately about rethinking the science and really thinking about, well, what should the basis be for determining or classifying someone as sick or mentally ill. And what's great is a growing number of psychiatrists transformed their own views on this question and saw the light, so to speak, and were persuaded by the activists and that process of forcing them to look at the science.
Because ultimately the activists had to sort of meet on the ground where the scientists were, in quote, where the organization was, even if they wanted to just focus on the politics of it, they had to sort of engage with their opponents because that was the ground that the opponents were working from.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking on kind of the film themes and speaking truth to your power, what lessons do you think we can kind of draw from the film about social change and how that happens and the importance of that?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that's been heartening during our distribution so far for the film. We've been in a number of festivals and appreciate Filmocracy featuring Cured, but it is still very relevant. And I think viewers have understood that the lessons that the film explores, it is a story from the past, but its lessons are very relevant to today. And for me, the biggest thing that I hope people get from it is understanding the sort of combination of forces that created this change. And it was really a mix of insiders and outsiders. The sort of outside protesters, the gay liberation activists who were storming the conference there in LA in 1970, and they brought anger to it. And it was important that they had anger and were really aggressive in confronting their opponents. But also you needed insiders, people like Dr. Hartman, who were members of the APA, who were respected within the APA, and they knew how change came about within the organization. And so it wouldn't have been enough to create the change within the APA if it had just been outside pressure. But at the same time, without the outside pressure, there wouldn't have been the internal momentum. So you needed the two, and the two sides weren't necessarily coordinating with each other, and they didn't even necessarily respect what the others were up to. But it was something that where you needed both pieces, both sides of the coin. And I think that's very relevant to the social change movements that are going on, is you need protest in the streets, you need anger, but ultimately you also need people in the halls of power who can transform that anger and energy to create lasting change.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking to kind of the distribution, you bringing up that kind of process, just jumping actually to one of our Q&As from the audience. We've got a question asking about how do you plan to make people watch your film more, since it is such obviously an important topic. So do you have any distribution plans for the future, or is that kind of all still being worked out?
Well, the bulk of the funding came from within the PBS system. Independent Television Service, to be exact, has a process, Open Call is the name of it, where filmmakers can pitch projects and they fund maybe like 15 or 20 films per year out of, I don't know, hundreds or maybe even more than 1,000 pitches. So it's steep odds, but we were really happy to be one of the projects in a recent round, which gave us production funding and also kind of put us into the PBS network in terms of broadcast. So then once it was done, we shopped it around within PBS, and there's now a broadcast plan for a national broadcast on Independent Lens in October of 2021. So that's kind of the anchor. And we're excited about that for a couple reasons. One, it will reach millions of people, which is great. Two, it's free, and people don't need to contend with passwords and platform subscription. So I think that's good, even though after the PBS window, we'll be able to stream it as well. And before that, we have some funding also to do outreach and impact work. So there's a pretty ambitious plan that we're putting together to take the film to communities and classrooms and medical schools and LGBT community centers and libraries and all that, primarily virtually, at least to start, and in person if that becomes safe and doable.
And then two other pieces of the equation, we'll continue with our in other film festivals throughout next year, probably even leading up to the PBS broadcast. As well, we're exploring various opportunities for virtual theatrical screenings, and of course, hopefully, as the vaccine kicks in next year, we'll be able to do in-person theatrical, maybe late next spring or into the summer. So that's a piece of the equation. Then we're working with a London distribution company that's handling foreign distribution beyond the U.S. So we're hoping the film really reaches a wide, worldwide audience.
Amazing. That sounds, fantastic. And I'm definitely happy that more people kind of get a chance to see it. And congratulations kind of on making that happen. As well, kind of speaking to that, is there any other kind of impact, donations or anything we can do to find out more information on how we can help support individually?
Well, that's great. Yeah. The website is cureddocumentary.com. And we're still raising money for the Impact campaign. And we have to thank the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. They've stepped forward as a presenting sponsor for our outreach campaign, provided a 6-figure grant for us to get started. And so we're trying to raise additional dollars so that we can expand the scope of that, because the more money we're able to raise, the more people will be able to reach with this. And I should say that all donations are tax deductible if people are, want to generously support our efforts.
Definitely. So we're just nearing the end here, and I'll answer another question from the audience. What are your guys' next plan for future in documentary, or what do you have going on next?
Well, one exciting piece that we didn't mention, but related to this, is that the documentary was recently optioned as the basis for a scripted series, which is being developed by Stephen Canals, who's the co-creator of Pose. So we are on board that project as producers and collaborating with Stephen to craft something that we hope will get the green light and move into production. He's talking about 6 or 8 parts. I mean, still to be determined, but a scripted series. And it's exciting to think about how the moments in the documentary, like that Dr. Anonymous speech or these zaps and protests, could really become full episodes with so much more backstory and inner life and psychological depth, like John Fryer, Dr. Anonymous, we had like 1 sentence of audio in the film from an NPR interview. But to think about scripting that character and making an episode about that truly startling and amazing and transformative moment, I think is very exciting. So for both of us, well, Patrick has his last film had dramatic narrative pieces. But I think it's true for both of us. This would be like the first narrative effort that we're working on, and excited. We're excited to have a chance to dig into that. Yeah,
wow, that's amazing. Congratulations again
Thank
to
you.
that. That's something super exciting to be able to kind of collaborate again together as well in a narrative space. So that is a rare opportunity and something definitely to look forward to. Yes, just as we wrap up here, is there anything else you kind of tell us about the project or anything else you want to share with our audiences before we kind of wrap up?
Well, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Cured Documentary, and then on Twitter at Cured Doc. So we'll be busy throughout the next year getting this film to reach as wide an audience as possible and really spark dialogue and conversation. And we really want to thank all the generous donors who stepped forward. Bennett talked about ITVS. We would have never been able to finish the film without the support of the independent television service. And so it's really, a film like this, it's hard for people to understand how much goes into it, how much, how many great team members, our production crew, and then the supporters, people who step up, who understand the value of this story. Because ultimately, I think Ben and I are both committed to uncovering particularly LGBTQ history, where we've been deleted from history often. So it's important for us to tell these stories, especially when the pioneers are still there, to be able to tell their firsthand accounts of what they did to help create where we are today.
And the other, piece of that is when you're dealing with archival licenses from footage networks, the price for like 1 second of footage can be around $100 if you're looking at worldwide rights in perpetuity. So you could do the math, but it is really quite a daunting proposition. And that's where, the generosity of funders and PBS in particular, ITBS, has made such a difference. So we're thrilled to be done and appreciate the chance to share it with folks here, and appreciate your Q&A. It's great to chat.
Perfect. Yeah, amazing. Thank you guys so much. Thanks again for joining us, taking the time to share more about your work and kind of presenting this amazing documentary to us and sharing it with more audiences.
Thank you.
We wish you guys all the best, and we hope to see you again over the course of the fest. And to our audience, thanks for joining us for the Q&A Cured. Be sure to vote. Bye for now.